What is up, everybody? I am HoopsandHipHop, and welcome back to another episode of the Pokeblock Podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about the Crown Tundra, as it's been out for about a week now, and I, as well as my guests, are going to be giving our impressions and just having a really good discussion about just everything in the Crown Tundra, what we thought of it, our opinions, and all that good stuff. And I've brought not one guest on today, but two. They're two great friends and two people that have actually been on the podcast before. We've got both Birdkeeper Toby and Truegreen7. How are you doing, guys? Thanks for coming on.
Good.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. So, as I said, I've already talked to you guys before about different subjects on the podcast before, and you guys were both, it's always good to talk to you guys individually, so together I thought it would be an extra super just awesome conversation, especially because obviously the buzz right now in the Pokemon community is all about the Crown Tundra and everything that it has brought to the table. And it's been a super exciting time, especially because this was obviously the meaty side of the podcast. And so I wanted to get your guys' thoughts and opinions, and I also want to get the thoughts and opinions of people watching. So if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to leave a comment. Let me know your favorite part of the Crown Tundra, what you thought of it in general, and all that good stuff as we talk about it as well. So I guess we'll lead off first with what is your just overall impressions before we get into specifics of how the DLC turned out overall. Either one of you can begin.
Overall impressions. Toby, you want to go first, or?
Yeah, I'm actually, I was about to sort of say this pre-podcast. I'm very conflicted. Is where I feel there are. There's bits to the Crown Tundra that I really enjoy, that feel really like, oh yeah, again, more steps in the right direction, which is what I've been saying. Sword and Shield, big step in the right direction for me. The first DLC, massive again. Here, massive again. And yet there are so many points where I left off feeling a little bit unsatisfied and a little bit disappointed, I think. Yeah, mixed bag.
Your expectations?
Right.
High. I had high expectations. Of course I did.
I guess we're gonna have to get into the specifics to understand why you were disappointed, but it's usually because of expectations, I guess.
Yeah. Just general overview is that like a mixed bag for me. What about you?
For me, it was overwhelmingly positive. Although I usually enjoy things, but like it was so nice to almost get a glimpse of what felt like Generation 9 that. Mm-hmm. It just, the whole thing felt surreal. Yeah, obviously, when we can start criticizing things, and I have things that we could talk about once we get to the specifics. But overall, I can't say it was overall any negative. There were specifics that were negative, probably, yeah, just like anything. But overall, yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I would say I'm very much in the same boat as Truegreen. There were things that I was noticing. I guess about just not just the Crown Tundra, but Sword and Shield in general, that it's like I had I guess you could say a nitpick here, a nitpick there, like this could be better, yeah, but like as a whole, my overall experience was really, really positive as well. I think the biggest thing that sort of, I guess, brings my entire opinion of it, I guess it summarizes it really well, is the biggest thing for me is that the only thing that took away from the Crown Tundra, in my opinion, was the fact that it was sort of an expansion that was in addition to the main game. So essentially, everything that was in the Crown Tundra was kind of like a side story, or it was like sort of detached almost from the main game. Because like, for instance, if let's say you had all that stuff, like the glaring legendary birds that were roaming around, the Reggies, and just everything that was in there, if that was in the main game and you did that throughout the course of the main game, then that would have been like a perfect scenario. So I guess like that's the only thing that
wouldn't it I wouldn't be say the opposite if it was an extension of the main game story. Wouldn't you say the same thing? You'd be like, I wish it was part of the main game.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it's more or less like a like it's more of a nitpick than anything, because like all of the content there is amazing and I really enjoyed it. I just sort of I caught myself thinking while I was playing it, and I just was like, if this was like sort of all intertwined with like the main narrative, then it would be perfect. And that's sort of why I'm very optimistic and hopeful about Generation 9 next big game, whatever that is, because they brought a lot of things back and did a lot of things good in the Crown Tundra that hopefully we can move forward with. Like, for instance, as far as like all the legendary Pokemon events that you had to do these specific things to get, I don't think we've had that since like Gen 4, Gen 5 that I can remember. So just like having that sort of as a mainstay and then intertwining it with the main base experience of a game is just going to be like, that's the dream. And that's really the only thing that, like, I guess the Crown Tundra lacked through no fault of its own for me.
It's funny because to me it seemed that even though I loved the Isle of Armor, it seemed like all the stuff in the Isle of Armor were the things that should have been in the main game. And it didn't feel like post-game at all, but it was, refreshing, and the setting was amazing. But the Crown Tundra, everything felt like post-game. All these legendary hunts were things that you did get in post-games in previous generations. And I think they were just a nice extension of what was already... Isle of Armor was, I'd say, at that point, the best part of Sword and Shield. It was like Sword and Shield, but like more of it and more detailed and more well handled, while Crown Tundra was the next step. It was...
Yeah,
and it's very clearly been designed for that. You've had a year to play Pokemon like Sword and Shield. You've played the Isle of Armor. One of the things I mad props and I love is how difficult the legendaries felt. The event like the Reggies and the Swords of Justice and the birds, how difficult they felt to obtain when you were actually in battle with them, as well as all of the out of battle requirements, which were also a lot of fun. It felt like this is something for an experienced Pokemon trainer, which I, obviously being one, very much appreciated. I was like, yes, I know I'm just throwing an Ultra Ball 100 times over, but that tediousness makes it feel so satisfying when you finally get the capture. And I kind of really appreciated that about it. And yeah, like you were saying, Hoops, like the legendary, like the dungeons. And it was interesting you should mention that the Reggie rooms were like reminding you of Gen 4, Gen 5, because kind of little Easter eggs. Those Reggie ruins are event Reggie ruins from Diamond, Pearl, I think Platinum specifically. If you have an event Regigigas in your game, you unlock those exact ruins inside the World of Sinnoh. It's like literally they've just remade them, and it's so cool.
Yeah, I definitely had a refreshing experience with just the difficulty of it too, because there was a couple times where, particularly with Cobalion, when I was trying to catch it, that I had to reset the game a couple times just because I would either, like, I didn't run out of balls, but like I would either faint myself because I ran out of potions, or Cobalion would faint itself because it got down to using struggle. It was like that hard to sort of like catch it, and
I had
it
to
was
do that for
frustrating.
Legendary, not gonna lie.
Yeah, it was like frustrating as heck, but like it's like the good frustrating. Yeah, it's sort of like the challenge of it all.
Terrakion actually, because of all the swords dances, he just wiped out my team like every time.
Well, it seemed, and I think I got lucky with the final battle against Calyrex, but it seemed that in that battle, while I was throwing Pokeballs, I was like, every single turn, it was like, oh, that stats boosted, and that stats boosted, and that stats boosted. I'm about to get wrecked, aren't I?
Yeah.
And I think I got lucky. I think I got it in like 1 or 2 resets. But I hearing from other people their experiences of like, it just wiped me out. Like, it just wiped me out. I get that. I get that.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know, like overall it just feels very, very much a step in the right direction. And I don't want to say, like, going back to my previous point about it being integrated into a main game. It's not that I feel like that all of that stuff should be in a main game, because obviously that would be a lot to ask for. But because, like, I do very much, like Ron said, it also feels like kind of a post-game type of experience, which I'm fine with too. But overall, it's kind of just like I think that is the next step, to sort of have, whether it be a few roaming legendaries like the birds, or a puzzle legendary like the Reggies, that's just in the game, that's just like sitting there. That's when I feel like we really come full circle.
For me, what felt like the next step wasn't really... I mean, it was the legendaries. It was less of the next step. For legendary, for having the Pokemon and the way they were executed, that more felt like going back to how it used to be. While the thing that felt like the next step was the actual layout and the locations in the Crown Tundra. So for example, in the Isle of Armor, everything was intertwined, and all the locations were connected in one small island, and also the sea. So, and it was cool, and it was like unlike anything we found in Pokemon, but and it was like it was a true open world, unlike the wild area in the main game. But the Crown Tundra, the way it was laid out and the way each location was formatted, I guess, the design of each location, it felt like a combination of roots and wild area, because they weren't just interconnected. They each path branched out and had even more branch paths. They were dispersed, and there was more surface area. There was more. They were separated a bit more, so it felt like just another part of the region that was even better than Galar.
I feel like if a whole game could be comprised of a lot of these Crown Tundras and wild areas, but with trainers as well. I mean, I think that's the one thing it really lacked, was just trainers throughout. But Isle of Armor was the same. If you could do that, you would be well on your way to, like you say, like a next-gen Pokemon game.
Trainers and HM puzzles, maybe, like, or Pokeride puzzles, and that's it. This is Gen 9.
Yeah,
I totally agree with that. I mean, even with going back to Isle of Armor, the DLC as a whole very much did feel like this sort of stepping stone towards whatever's next, and I think Crown Tundra just solidifies that, because Crown Tundra is sort of even built off of Isle of Armor, because one of the biggest things that I missed bringing up trainer battles from the Isle of Armor was like an actual town and community, and we got that with Crown Tundra, even if it was like a small town. So
the first camera controllable town, like
right,
pretty epic.
It is pretty.
I was hoping for more. I won't lie. I was, like you say, expectations. I was kind of like, oh, there's 3 towns here, and there's 3 or 4 houses. Every single house has like, oh, this is the Cosmog house. This is the Story house. You go back to Peony. This is the Mayor's house, and then that's kind of like it. And it's like, I would have liked to have seen either more to this town, or if this town is supposed to be this small. More towns,
the question is,
more areas.
Compare it to any other town, just the town alone, not the expectation of more than one town.
Yeah.
But comparing that one town to any other town in Galar, there was more, like, it was more engaging. The people felt like actual, like, citizens, while I can't remember any citizens from any other town. So as a town itself, by itself is pretty good. But yeah, I mean, I understand the expectation of more than, I also expected probably 2 towns.
I was hungry for a little bit more than that, but I mean, yes, it was nice and it was good, and it's like, okay, so you can do this, so please do more of this, so like going forward.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
Yeah,
I think, and when we get into criticisms and stuff, but like, that was a lot of my feeling, was like, this is nice, where is more? And I think that's a lot of how I felt, was just like, I'm not satisfied, I'm hungry, I want more, like, let me, and I felt that way a lot throughout the generation, to be honest, but like even I replayed the whole of Sword and Shield in the week leading up to the DLC, and there was like this point where I'm walking through Turffield, getting really excited about how gorgeous the whole town looks beyond what you have access to, and I'm just there like, why don't I have access to more, all of that, more pockets, more areas, more things to do and explore, and things of
but then, for example, like in Freezington, I liked how there were little crevices that you can get into by going behind houses and stuff like that. It was honestly more packed with things to do than the average town. So it's just, if you design towns like that, more towns, just like you said, you just want more. It wasn't that the quality itself was bad.
Right,
and then I agree. If more of this, please.
Yeah.
Right. Well, since you touched on criticisms, Toby, a little bit, why don't we get into that? You sort of let us off with, you had a bit of a mixed bag. So what is the negative side of that bag specifically for you?
And you know, I don't have like a logical reasoning for a lot of this. This is just my emotions, and this is just what I found myself literally while live streaming, kind of several hours in, going and sort of saying I'm frustrated about this situation. And so and this was, the legendary birds were a big selling point. The trees, the mystery behind the trees and the legendary birds and what's going on there is like a big selling point to it all. And, you know, you catch the birds in this really phenomenal way, by the way. The build-up is awesome, and going to all the different wild areas is so cool. And once you've got all the birds, so what? Why are they here? Why are they in the tundra? Why are there Galarian forms? Is it something to do with the tree? Oh, the tree's got a greedent in it. Okay, that's cool, but, like, why? Where does this all come together? I felt the same way about the Reggies. Now, the Regigigas Easter egg thing in there, which, for those of you who haven't played... I mean, that's awesome as well. Like, it was cool to have that Regigigas, but at the same time, like, is there some inscription somewhere as to why the Reggies are here, and how does that build out the world? No, nothing. And then I felt with the third plotline, the Calyrex plotline, I felt that the opposite was true, and that there was no level of build-up. There was none of this exploration for it. There was none of this, I didn't care about it. It was just a dialogue tunnel. Here's the lore, here's the legends, here's the reason. Yeah, literally from A to B, I just felt like I was going through this funnel of dialogue. I think I moved down to the gravesite at one point, and then up to the temple. And I'm looking on that beautiful artwork of the Crown Tundra, seeing the temple with the dead tree, and I'm like, wow, I wonder what's gonna be in there. What amazing mysteries will be in this. Cool, oh, it's an empty box with one thing to interact with, which causes the plot thing to happen. Okay, and at the end of it, I was like, so Calyrex has nothing to do with Zacian Zamazenta, any of the old Gala legends, the Kings of Gala, that's nothing to do with it. Okay, and there's the horse, and there's a carrot, and like, it was kind of like, Calyrex shows up, hey, the people, I think they've forgotten about me, would you check? You do a 360, hey guys, you've forgotten about him? Yeah, sorry, they've forgotten about you, mate. Oh, well, in that case, I'm gonna need my horse. Would you meet me over there in 2 minutes to find my horse? Yeah, we'll do that, all right. Oh, damn, we're gonna need some carrots. All right, mate, you got any carrot seeds? Yeah, I got some carrot seeds, cool. And it was just a dialogue funnel, and I was like, I don't care about this. I couldn't care less about any of this nonsense.
But here's the problem. I mean, although you're completely valid and you're like, subjectivity makes sense. But what if you do care? Like, I cared, and then because of that,
amazing for you. I'm happy for you.
It's like, I get, like, Game Freak isn't the best at, is not good at story, right? They're always gonna, I don't think there's ever been a perfect story. There's never a perfectly executed story in a Pokemon game. But it's always gonna leave you wanting more and stuff like that. But what was my point? The point is basically that, I guess, I personally liked how the Calyrex story took place. For example, how it wasn't just like, oh, you're the chosen one, or I sense that you're good, you're an amazing trainer, help me. It was more like, oh, you did something nice, Calyrex, by, putting the hat on Calyrex's statue, he sensed your compassion, he wants it, so now he showed up to you, now he wants you to help him. I understand his plight, it makes sense within the Pokemon world, and it makes you enjoy, especially with, it makes you appreciate Calyrex's character, and also it's just very entertaining seeing Calyrex and Peony's stuff. I don't know if we were spoiling things, right?
Mm-hmm. And I
thought that was really entertaining. I understand asking the townspeople that wasn't fun.
But even like down to the hat at the beginning, it's like, oh, there's a statue. It's clearly missing its crown because we've seen Calyrex on the promo.
I've watched multiple playthroughs where people did they missed the hat thing. They're like,
how?
I don't know.
Sorry.
They're just everybody has like a different like. People are just rushing. Okay. Either they're rushing through it, and they have each person has their own thing that they want to explore and they want to do, and their expectations. So they either didn't expect a story element and more expected just more exploration, and vice versa.
And here's an interesting kind of thought experiment. Would you say? So I would say that I was more invested in the story of the legendary birds. Even though there really isn't much.
I wasn't invested in their story. I thought that was the best, that was the most well executed part, because there wasn't any story, there wasn't anything to botch. Right. They didn't botch anything.
but it's kind of like, cool, I want to know about them. And then I didn't get that. What I felt is that, like, once you've got all 3, maybe you come back to the tree, maybe something...
Do they ever tell you things like that in, like, the previous games? Like, when you're catching the legendary birds in previous games, does it tell you where they're from? Like...
No, and it would have been lovely to find out just anything, any snippet of information.
You're right. You're right. It would be really cool, but then I just didn't have that expectation. I was just like, cool.
Sure.
I'm learning whatever they're giving me, and that means that's what all that exists. Whatever they're giving me is what they thought of.
Well, I think watching the trailer for the Crown Tundra, and kind of the expectation is set by that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm looking at it and I'm personally thinking, so this is about this big tree and these 3 birds and the big temple at the top, and there's a Calyrex, and we're gonna learn about the King of Galar, and maybe, and there's gonna be some new Reggies. How are the Reggies involved? I'm left with these questions that felt unanswered by what we got. I'm not saying that what we got was like mediocre. I just felt that when it came to the birds and the Reggies, I was highly curious, highly interested, and felt unrewarded. And with the other plot, the one where it was like dialogue, I felt, well, there's no build-up for me here. For me, it's like they have the reverse issue of each other in terms of that thread and these threads. That's just kind of how I ended up. That was my main criticism at the base of it.
I will say, I feel like I'm sort of a mix. I agree and disagree with you at the same time, because on the Calyrex point, for me, I actually really enjoyed how the plot was sort of broken up and you could sort of figure out Calyrex's story by visiting the various ruins.
Yeah, that's true.
If you wanted to get a little more detail on it, I thought that was really cool. As far as like just the dialogue and sort of, I guess, the straightforwardness of its story and the build-up and whatnot. Personally, I wasn't like expecting some like big narrative, I guess, just because it is the expansion. It is just an expansion. It's not like you're starting from like 0.0 of the game. So I wasn't expecting something to sort of like build over time. So the story that way was fine. However, I do agree with the whole legendary birds sentiment, because the Dyna tree absolutely seems super important.
I agree with the tree stuff. Like the tree should have had closure with the tree itself, but with the birds, I thought I was entertained by just them, by the Pokemon themselves. Not like I didn't need a story.
Yeah, like on one hand, I can see Toby's point where like a little more could have been said as far as like these birds migrated here. Why did they migrate here? Why do they have this form?
Well, sorry.
I don't even need.
I think on the website they kind of revealed, don't they?
They do say that on the website. So it's kind of weird that it doesn't say that on the game. Like even if they just had some sort of like if Peony was like, yeah, my research indicates that these birds came to Galar because such and such, or like they migrated here, blah blah blah. Like just something simple. So I can see Toby's point about that. But then to Ron's point, I will say, because I did want to talk about the gameplay of the birds as well. Like I thought that was phenomenal. The fact that they were just sort of always moving, you could see them off in the distance. Like if you did that, just like say like in a future game you did that, but you sort of like maybe expanded the area that those Pokemon could roam just slightly, like it would be so amazing, because you could just be wandering along and then like something just whips by you that you're not expecting, and
I can't think of a more engaging way that we have caught legendaries in the past.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Completely.
But yeah, Toby, I can see what you're saying with that.
And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that I need like a character. The last thing I want is a character to come out and then give me the full expo info dump. But actually, like things like the statues, which are really cool, the little runic statues that tell you about the horses. You know, if there were just little things about the birds like that dotted around that, you know, now you've caught the birds, you can understand them, or even during, you know, you can get that. For me, all the stuff about the horses on the stones, and maybe I played it wrong. I played it the way I played it, right? You know, when I was doing the Calyrex story, I was like, well, this is the main plot, so just wherever Calyrex tells me to go, I'll do that. And then I will go off and explore and do all the Reggie and other stuff afterwards. And so my Calyrex experience was Freezington, the graveyard, and up at the top of the castle, and that was like it. That was
my Calyrex experience was mixed with the Reggies and even some of the Musketeer stuff, so it was prolonged. And I was I had a lot of fun exploring. Specifically the places that the Calyrex story led me to, like the snow slide slope.
Yeah,
that's my favorite. One of my favorite locations.
Gorgeous
in all
area.
Pokemon.
Oh, I completely agree. I actually that
tunnel,
slope is
the tunnel between the peak. That was again an indication of, hey, we're having these kind of intricate dungeons again.
Yeah.
The peak itself too was had beautiful scenery and had beautiful Pokemon. The locations were beautiful, so it felt like part of the story. Like, I'm being led through this adventure. So again, it depends whether or not you care about Calyrex. I guess that does affect your mood.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I thought, and I agree with you. Like, I think those routes as well, like, as construction of routes, the area, the world, it all looks phenomenal and beautiful. I'm not criticizing that at all. But for example, the Swords of Justice stuff with Sonya, the footprints, I didn't know Sonya was in. I didn't meet Sonya until like well after I was done with Calyrex. It was like the last thing I did, and I was like,
really?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I had I mean, that's the nice thing maybe about this DLC is that it can be played in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And perhaps a healthier way to have played it would have been not to aim. I sort of went where the game told me to go, because I wanted to proceed through the plot and assumed that I would kind of visit everywhere along the way as part of that main story, which was, in my mind, the Calyrex story, and maybe a way to encourage people to play it if they had some reason listening to this spoiler cast and not played it already, is, go and explore and do multiple plots at once. Like right at the beginning, one of my other criticisms was, the first thing that you do in the Crown Tundra is you do the Dynamax adventure. And the Dynamax adventure is wildly fun, and I'm really enjoying playing that after the fact. But going to the Crown Tundra, knowing that there's this big, vast tundra out there with ruins and birds and Calyrex and all sorts, I was like, why am I doing Dynamax raids? Why am I spending the first half hour doing a Dynamax raid? This is the wrong thing for this moment in time. And granted, I probably could have just cancelled out and gone and done it, but by that time.
But then you wouldn't have following Pokemon if you wouldn't have initiated the first part of the story.
There you go.
But here's the thing. So like for me, it was, again, I don't think there's an objective perspective. So like you're completely like right in your experience. So for me, it was like the opposite. Like I'm like, oh, okay. The more delay there is in initiating story elements and stuff, and doing the things that I wanted to do, the longer this experience is going to be. Basically,
right,
I would want them to do the unexpected things instead of the things that I wanted to do, because then there's surprises that I didn't expect, and that's kind of what was fun about the Crown Tundra, where there are a lot of way more surprises that I didn't expect. Other than like, for example, the Isle of Armor had like the following Pokemon. That was like one of the best surprises.
That's huge. Yeah.
And there wasn't a surprise as big as that. But like, I'm seeing Sonya again. I mean, that wasn't a surprise since I knew she was going to be, but that was awesome.
Yeah.
I would say like as far as surprises go, I think obviously one of the best things that the Crown Tundra did was just sort of things in the overworld that you could either stumble upon or you had to figure out. Like, I was not expecting the Musketeer thing.
Yeah, me neither.
No.
I did not.
Yeah.
And so like having to sort of like explore the world because that was super awesome. I was super refreshed that, I guess I was sort of half expecting the Reggie puzzles to like be some sort of like puzzle that you had to figure out to get in, but it was just really refreshing to see that, because I could have seen it going the other way as well, where it was just super easy. And I think the things like the Keldeo quest thing and the Spiritomb event and the Regigigas one, like all those like were
so cool,
extra as well, because it's like we definitely weren't expecting those. So that type of stuff makes me super
Do you know if you do the Keldeo one and you go back to Sonya in mainland Galar, there's like a little cutscene?
Yeah.
Interesting. I did not.
If you go visit her, it's tiny and it's too super irrelevant and nothing really happens, but it's cool that it's there. I appreciate
like how-
there very much.
Sonya was the only person who acknowledges the fact that you're a champion in all of the DLCs. Other than like the Galarian Star Tournament, which we could talk about too.
Are you sure about that? I'm sure.
Hop, even when he comes in the Isle of Armor, doesn't acknowledge that you're a champion.
Interesting. Okay.
Because again,
So
I feel like the Isle of Armor were meant to be played in the middle of the games, while this is post game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. On that point, though, I wanted to mention something about the Dynamax, and then we can go to the tournament if we want. I don't really feel one way or the other as far as what you were saying, Toby, about like it being at the beginning of the game, but I will say that could have contributed to me playing it a little more
Me too.
than I normally would have, along with the event that was at the end of it that has to do with Necrozma, because as far as like catching all of the legendaries go, that's something that I have, because there's obviously we've had the wormhole, the ultra wormholes in Sun and Moon, and then we had the mirage spots in Oraz where you could catch them. And in those two previous instances, that didn't really like grab my attention. Like I did it for a little bit, and then it's sort of just like I wasn't like invested enough to keep going.
And if you
but
fail,
I feel like
if you fail in those, you just restart. and you just,
right, yeah, that is true. But I don't know, something about the Dynamax adventures, maybe it was the placement of it, maybe it was tying it to Necrozma, like an event you had to like, you have to like try several times to get Necrozma to appear. And I think just those things sort of contributed to me investing in catching the legendaries. And then the fact that it's like, I don't know, for some reason I just feel like it's more accessible than say like the ultra wormholes where you had to kind of navigate your way through that maze a little bit before you found a legendary. And so overall I felt like that, as far as a catch all legendaries mechanic, I thought that was really well put together.
I like it. I was just saying in terms of placement of time as to where you're introduced to it. But
right, yeah,
it
I can see what you're
is
saying.
wildly fun, and I've been playing it every night since the DLC's come out, in terms of like get a few friends together, strategizing, and you have to strategize about like, this is the last type, what do we have along the way? It's really good content.
Yeah,
it's really good.
I haven't encountered Zygarde yet, but I hear he's really hard. And I also just like straight up lost against Giratina because I was using a Helioptile and I ran out of moves to use because I had an electric move and like one other move that I could use, and then my third like attacking move was a normal move that I couldn't use against Giratina. So I straight up just like lost because I hadn't, I guess, had the foresight to sort of plan that out.
Yeah.
So,
Did it say ghost at the end?
what was that?
Did it say ghost or dragon at the end of the adventure?
I think it did say ghost, and I just hadn't realized that I was low on PP, and so I didn't like make the switch with that latest Pokemon. And so yeah, it was just a case of I wasn't really prepared for that to sort of come into play, which I thought was cool. As far as the Galarian Star tournament though, how are you guys, what are your thoughts on that?
The characters of Sword and Shield are among my favorite in the franchise, so I enjoyed it a lot. It felt like a post-game thing, because my Pokemon were exactly just below the levels of all the gym leaders and stuff, so it felt like a slight challenge. The trainers, the gym leaders had actual strategies that worked together, like Raihan using Earthquake while I had Raihan versus I was versing Raihan and Piers, so Raihan would use Earthquake while Piers would use Obstruct, because I was with Marnie, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna play with it. I'm gonna play a little bit more too.
Yeah, I feel like I need to go back and I played it. I played once through with it, and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm kind of hoping that maybe it gets more difficult, although it was, for an in-game challenge, pretty tough. I'm hoping there's some more difficulty curve to it, or that something happens after you win X amount of times. But I'll probably play it a few more times just to see all the trainers, just to have them all kind of interact, and it's fun to see them talk and get extra
But
dialogue.
then again, do you expect it to go high? Like, I definitely would have wanted it to, keep on getting harder, especially since my Pokemon are leveling up and getting experience through it. But it's like the Elite Four, right? Where, I mean, I don't expect the Elite Four to get harder.
No, I mean, I think I've heard that it doesn't get any harder at this point, so I don't expect it anymore. I did kind of think, well, yeah, after the first run through, I'd imagine that it would get like a little bit tougher at least, or that there would be, I don't know, if the idea of the Galarian Star Tournament is this is the post game of the second DLC, this is the post game of the second DLC, that this should really be the hardest challenge the Pokemon has to offer in any of its games. In my mind,
I don't think it's supposed to be post game of a post game. I just think it's supposed to be normal post game. And I don't think there's any post game.
It's the post game of the second DLC. I don't know. I think
the first DLC was definitely not supposed to be post game. Maybe just one battle, which was Mustard's battle.
Yeah, Mustard's
nothing
final
about
battle.
it was post game.
And getting the honey tree. You can't do that until post game. But yeah, no, I just kind of felt that like this is the thing. You need to have beaten the champion. You need to have done the majority of the DLC, I think, before the Galarian Star Tournament shows up. And that involves catching, this high-level Calyrex and doing all this other... So for me, I just kind of felt like, if there's going to be a challenge, this is allowed to be it. And I got through the first time with not too much difficulty. So knowing that I think I know that it doesn't get too much harder, or that there's no, like, prize for it, really, I'm just kind of like, well... I might pop in to see what the characters are about, but again, it's one of those things that I probably won't touch too much now that I've done it. I'm probably just going to stick to the Dynamax adventures because they're a lot of fun.
I do wish they limited the amount of Pokemon we could use in the tournament, like only 3 Pokemon, just like everybody else.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. That would actually make it a lot harder, because I noticed that too.
I'm honestly just gonna, whenever I play it, I'm just gonna shut the game off whenever I lose. I have to use more than 3 Pokemon.
Nice.
Yeah.
Play them.
I will say, like, to its credit, because it's not like, it isn't like an immensely, like, super difficult challenge or anything like that, but I will say, like, depending on who you're facing against, like, Leon and I think it's Mustard and maybe someone else, they have level 80 Pokemon, so, like,
nice.
it's pretty, it gets up there as far as level. And one thing that I was running through it last night, just battling it because I wanted to unlock the characters, and I realized that one of the more like beloved features in a Pokemon game is when you get to rematch gym leaders. Like it was a thing in a couple of games, and then it went away, and people were like, "Oh, that was so awesome! Why don't they bring that back?" And like it was when it came back, whenever it did, it was like people love when you can do that, and so I realized that, like, not only does Sword and Shield let you do that, which is cool, but also you get to battle with them too. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's pretty much the best version of that feature that a lot of people like a lot. And I feel like Sword and Shield in general, maybe it's because of all the criticisms and stuff, is very much that way, where things sort of just fly under the radar that are, like, insanely good. Like, with Hop and him eventually catching Zacian and the overall arc of the legendary Pokemon, in my personal opinion, that's the best way that legendaries have ever been used in a game, and it sort of just flies under the radar. And then the music is, once again, quite possibly the best music in the series in terms of just, like, the overall soundtrack that flies under the radar. So, like, there's a lot of things about Sword and Shield that are really, really good that just don't get talked about for whatever reason.
How much did you like the new legendary bird battle thing? Because that was, I think, definitely my favorite music in the DLC. In my top 10, maybe in all of Sword and Shield.
I would have to go listen to it again, but I enjoyed
amazing.
All of. There wasn't a single track that I didn't like. I particularly liked the remix of the Reggie's theme, where each one sort of had a reference to its, like, element.
Yeah.
Like, you could hear something in the background. I would say probably, I mean, I guess if we're on just like the biggest thing that I would say that I didn't like, and this is completely personal opinion, is I wasn't a fan of the designs of the horses or Calyrex's fused form. Yeah. I felt like the horses, they looked like they were meant to be fused with Calyrex, which isn't bad. That's just to say they sort of had a kind of like plain look to them, in my opinion. But they looked like way too overly basic, in my opinion, as far as their design. Like, it looked like they just took a horse's body and slapped either the element of like ice or ghost on it and didn't really do much else. And then the Calyrex fusion, where it's like just sitting on it, it's like just sitting on the horse, and like that's just straight up what it is. I felt like that was also kind of basic. Like that fusion could have been done in a more creative way, and so I wasn't a fan of those things particularly. That's probably my like biggest gripe. But I mean, I've been using Shadow Rider Calyrex just to sort of like burn through the tournament and stuff and just like battle with it, because I was like, I never use legendaries, and now they're giving us all these legendaries, so I might as well use it. And it's a beast in battle because it's got the Astral Barrage move that, especially for the tournament, it hits both of the opposing Pokemon, and then whenever you feint a Pokemon, the its ability kicks in that raises its special attack. So it's just like pretty OP.
If we're talking about opinions on the legendaries, I think Glastrier is probably my favorite horse Pokemon. I think it looks really cool. and Spectrier, I think, like, it just had just the idea of having the hooves separate from the body is also like really cool. I like them. I wasn't disappointed. And the fusion, I understand disappointment if you expected it to be a fusion. I didn't even know it was supposed to be is it because it's a fusion? Like, if it was just Calyrex on the horse, is that a problem?
Well, no. So like, I don't know, just the idea of, I guess, like, if it was just Calyrex riding a horse for some reason, like,
I mean, that's what it is.
That would be fine. But like, I don't know, I think maybe it's just the idea of a Pokemon riding another Pokemon and then that being a fused form.
Yeah.
I mean,
like, if they were more actually like fused in some way, then I'd be like, okay, yeah, cool. But it's like,
I don't know why they would be fused though. Like, why would they be fused?
Right. I'm not saying like that they should, like, as far as like story goes, they should be.
I think that was just like
I just think design. I think design wise, it would. I don't know. I feel like it would have been a little better if they were more woven together than just like having Calyrex ride the horse.
It didn't feel like Calyrex and the horses. I mean, obviously, it didn't. I don't know that it felt that their designs complemented each other. Is that a good way of putting it? I didn't feel like they felt like two pieces that should be going together. If that makes any sort of sense. They just kind of felt like, all right, as the horse Pokemon. Okay, now I sit on the horse Pokemon. Okay, cool. Like,
I get it for the ghost one, but I think the white of both of them complemented each other for the ice one. But whatever. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, and I agree with the assessment on sort of a blandness about them. I definitely think the ice one is better. Like, the ice hooves are really cool, and the ice horn is really cool. And I get like what you're saying about the floating off of its hooves for the ghost one. Like, I think, yeah, that's like cool in concept, and just execution felt a little bit like better. I will say, Regieleki took me by surprise completely. I thought that Regidrago, like, that's the one for me. And the moment I saw the animation of Regieleki, bouncing about, and you're like, it's ancient and legendary, but fun and zany, and everything about it hit me in the right kind of place, and I was like, this is cool. Yeah.
Are we speculating that's probably the most modern one? It was probably like made in the Industrial Revolution or something?
Possibly.
I think that's the general idea, is that it's like the modern age.
Have you seen the Pokedex entry? This is really dumb. That says its entire body is made up of a single organ that generates electrical energy. Regieleki is capable of creating all of Gala's energy. And you just think, well, what was the point of that plot with Chairman Rose and Eternatus?
Well, no, there was another one. I don't know if it was Regidrago or someone else, but it was one of the legendaries that talked about how its power could like destroy a dump truck. And I have mentioned this on my channel. There has been a trope since like the beginning of Pokemon with Pokemon destroying vehicles.
Yeah.
Like it has occurred from the beginning all the way until now, and it's hilarious that they just like keep randomly throwing it in there.
It's like whoever writes the Pokedex clearly works at a junkyard, and it's just like, this is another dump truck. Yeah, which one was this? Okay, Rhyhorn, great.
I have 2
Yeah.
questions. First, what was your expectations? Like, what were you most looking forward to doing in the Crown Tundra? And then also, how did the landscape compare to any place in the mainland Galar to you?
I guess I'll start. As far as the landscape goes, I'd say the landscape was, I would say it's easily the best, just because you have a big area, and then you've got varied environments in terms of like the weather and stuff, and you've got that mountain that you can just overlook things with. But then even on the other side, like you get to the water area, the lower
frigid
end of it.
sea.
And you can like look up at the mountain, and it's beautiful. So yeah, easily it's got like the best environments. And then what was the first part of that question?
What were your expectations? Like, what were you wanting to do most in the deal in the Crown Tundra?
I would say I was just looking forward to just how the legendaries like plot line went and how it was sort of like executed. And I would say overall I was pretty happy about it, just because the biggest thing for me was the fact that they went back to that unique method of obtaining so many different Pokemon where you had to do this and this, but there wasn't really a hint about it, and it was just like, it was very much a return to form that I enjoyed a lot, and I'm optimistic, but also just like crossing my fingers that it carries into what's next.
I mean, is it possible to get worse?
I literally echo those thoughts 100%, except I had this disappointment apparently on the legendary story. Like what you're saying about the landscape, best landscape easily. Exploring it is gorgeous. The slippery slope, the tunnels. There are areas of like the Isle of Armor, I think, that rival it. Like, I really like the soothing wetlands, and I really like the forest focus, but landscape's amazing. And as for expectations,
yeah, I do wish there was a forest in the Crown Tundra, but that would make sense.
Yeah, of course. And like even just one of the things that made it so special is that there's fossil Pokemon and ancient Pokemon everywhere, and you're like just walking around like this. The fact that these Pokemon are here tells a story about what this place is, and it's literally the land that time forgot. This ancient place where who knows what mysteries and secrets are there. There's so much about it to love. And then just in terms of story, like my expectations, it was that I would go in and learn more about the legendary stories. And while I had a great time with the Reggies and great time with the birds, I don't feel like I learned a lot. I felt there's still something missing. And then with the Calyrex thing, my previous criticism, where it's like, wow, all I got was story, and it's in my face. It's like, okay, calm down. Like, why do I care about? I don't know yet. Get me in gently. If you had those story beats like tied in about the birds, but like scattered throughout the hunt for the birds, it would have been like the ultimate Pokemon experience. And it's like, so close.
So then I guess that really was, it was just the pace. It was also the pace of the story, but like the pace that you were playing was different. Like I was pacing it out, so I wasn't just doing every single thing that he was telling me exactly when he was telling me to do it. So I think the reason why I enjoyed it so much is because what I wanted to get out of the Crown Tundra was exploration, and since that was the best part of the Crown Tundra, I was completely satisfied,
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I think we can all agree that it was just really fantastic. And I think just as a final sentiment before we wrap up here, I think the philosophy, because Game Freak mentioned sort of when it was like in the before Sword and Shield actually came out, that they kind of like to leave some meat on the bone per se when they develop their games, because they know they're going to make more than one game on a system. And the way I think they mentioned it in an interview, they like to leave some room for themselves to improve, just so they have something that I guess it's part just to like make each entry different, especially on the same system, but also like so they can always take the next step with every game instead of sort of plateauing and just like having every game sort of be the same. But I think overall, I think the Crown Tundra does just that, where it's like it's obviously a massive improvement overall, and over like the base Sword and Shield game in a lot of ways. And I mean, it's really, I'm almost on like pins and needles waiting for what the next big thing is, because I'm so just optimistic and confident that like, yes, this lines up with what they've said they're gonna do and what they've done historically, and obviously it's like, why would you regress after you made all these improvements? But it's also like, we just don't know, you just gotta wait and see. But luckily it's like, I don't think we're gonna have to wait too long to see the next big thing, because we've got obviously a big year next year for Pokemon with the 25th anniversary, and then Pokemon Day is in February, and they always have something big to say then. Yeah. So it's like, we won't have to wait too long to find out what's next, and I feel it'll be pretty good, and the Crown Tundra is pretty good. But with that being said, I think I've got to wrap it up. So thank you to both of you for coming on. It was a lot of fun. It was great hearing your perspectives. I will have the links to both Truegreen and Toby in the description. Be sure to check them both out. They've got a lot of great content and good Crown Tundra content specifically, so be sure to check them out and leave your opinions and thoughts about the Crown Tundra as well in the comments below. And with that being said, I'll be back next Friday with another podcast. We'll talk about some great stuff, and in the meantime, hope you guys have a great weekend and a great week, and until the next one, as always, I'll smell you guys later.